All right, welcome everyone. Here we go. This is my, I think, fifth apparently, according to LiveSplit, attempt at running the Super Mario Challenge story mode. So let's jump right in. Make sure I am locked into my splits. And 3, 2, 1, go. We're off to the races. So this first part of the game, if you haven't seen it before, is just the story mode. I say story mode a little bit lightly. The story is that Princess Peach is kidnapped, and that's it. If you were looking for a, in-depth storytelling, this is not the game for you. There is obviously some other commentary going on. If you look at the bottom left screen, that is the lower screen for me. That is where you can see some conversations between a pigeon and a girl who can apparently understand the pigeon, and that's this game. They're sort of the mascots of the game. They're the ones who are telling you how all the different level mechanics work. Because really, what's interesting about this story mode is that it's not just designed as like a challenge similar to other Mario levels. This is designed specifically to make sure you learn the mechanics of making Mario levels. Now it does that by introducing you to the different mechanics in Mario levels. So that's not dissimilar from other games in the series, but it's interesting sort of the focus they have on how to use the different elements. And so that air quote story mode in the bottom left, you'll see it in between worlds, very briefly hopefully if I'm mashing well. That is the full story. That is them explaining, here's some of the mechanics that you've seen, here's some of the mechanics you're about to see, and some tips for making good levels. The first level from this game was pretty standard. It was just the original 1-1. This is where Nintendo's like, wait, you can put Koopas on top of Koopas. And from here on out, everything gets a little bit crazier. In this level, there's a hidden staircase of blocks here. And timing it is a little bit tricky. You want to make sure you're jumping as soon as Mario lands on the block for optimal movement, but if you press the A button even a little bit too soon, then your input won't happen because you pressed A while Mario was in midair, and Mario cannot jump in midair. In this game, at least. In between each of these levels, you'll get a small course select screen or a small course clear screen. We're always going to choose next. If you're playing this casually and you wanted to go back and clear something, or you want to try the level again, farm for lives if you needed to, you could hit go back, you could hit save and quit, but for this particular run, obviously we want to just keep moving forward, we want to keep going fast. This is the first time we're introduced to the new Super Mario Brothers physics and sort of, or I guess not really physics, more of the different style. So there's different styles in this game. You have the original Super Mario Brothers, you have Super Mario World, Super Mario Bros. 3, and New Super Mario Brothers. Or NSMBU, New Super Mario Brothers U. And the interesting thing is the physics are actually the same across all of these. So even though like 1-1 looks like the 1-1 from the original game, if you watch the way I speedrun it compared to like Cosmic or Darby and playing the actual original game, and this level as well, 1-4, they won't look the same at all. And it's because if you've been playing Mario 35, you may notice as well that I'm doing things that don't really work in the original physics set. But they work because this game changes the physics so everything is based off of New Super Mario Bros. U, and so that means that, I'll have to hit the timer split. That means that a couple of these things just work a bit differently. The routes are slightly changed from the original. Sorry, I need to make sure I actually hit that. Some of the routes are a little changed from the original as a result, where things will look a bit different because I can make jumps that the other games can't, and I also run into stuff that the other games don't. So it's been fun playing this because there's some nostalgia definitely from the levels they brought in from previous games, but at the same time you cannot rely on those too heavily because what you do just is not quite the same. That being said, it doesn't hurt to go look at some of those other speedruns for ideas, so definitely something you can do. This level 2-1 is our first underwater level, but really it was just Nintendo showing off that you could do pixel art. It's kind of hilarious to me that Nintendo decided to do a pixel art level because they literally made the actual pixel art for this game. But they did one anyway. I think, again, they're just trying to show you all the different things you could do with this game and with level creation. And showing you that you can have a level that is still a level, but mostly designed to show off your artwork skills. Is an interesting thing for them to be able to show to newer players, newer level creators. But for us, it means that there's not too much going on. It is possible to die there, 100%. This level is actually it's a more difficult IL than others to get because you do have to have pretty precise swimming movement, and swimming movement is not quite as easy as timing a single A press because you have more omnidirectional movement. That complicates things, kind of like Koopa Clown Car levels are also a little difficult to get the records for, just because the movement is a little more, there's more to optimize in the movement, I'll say it that way. This level 2-2 is copied from Super Mario Bros. 3. I mean, you can see that from the style, but this level actually does appear in the Super Mario Bros. 3 game. There is a critical difference at the end of it, which is that there's now a pipe that spawns extra Koopas. So you'll see I'll wait here for a second for this red Koopa to spawn in. And this pipe is added because in the original game, basically, if you went to the left and then right again, enemies would respawn. Like, every time you scrolled the screen, enemies would respawn. However, in the Mario Maker series, enemies are sort of perma-killed once you've killed them. And so if you were unlucky and you accidentally took out all the Koopas in the level without using one to get that ending sequence, you would have been soft-locked. And so, or, you know, yeah, you just would have been dead. So they give you a pipe there, specifically so that there's always a Koopa right there for you to use to get past that block section. This is the original game's 1-2. It's now much later in the series, which is interesting. I don't know if they decided that this level was actually just harder than 1-4 and put it later, or if this was intended to be like, hey, here's some new mechanics, this one just has more complicated things going on, but you'll notice a few changes with the platforms. And again, the physics just not quite the same as that original game. So if you've been playing a lot of new Super Mario or Super Mario 35, or if you played the original game a lot, then you can see that my jumps wouldn't necessarily look the same as they do in the original. The original game had a lot, I want to say, heavier gravity. Mario arced a lot less and fell down a lot faster after his jumps. It kind of feels like I'm piloting a tank when I play the original game compared to this one where Mario just sort of floats all the time. But the original game, like, this is just a classic. So it's one of those things where it's fun to be able to play those levels and just enjoy the levels again, while still speedrunning something that's a bit newer, a bit more forgiving, I'll say. Here we go. This level's fun because this is not what Nintendo intended for you to do, but it's it's ridiculously fun and it's also very deadly, so here we go. Yep. I can't do the strat anymore. So you're supposed to, if you do that strat really well, actually jump off of the P-switch using a frame-perfect jump and fly over that annoying staircase and get right to the pipe at the bottom. I do go for it, even though it's dangerous, but fortunately didn't get it this time. To be fair, that's one of the hardest tricks that I include in the run. There are other hard tricks that I choose not to include. Because they're just too risky at this point. I'm not consistent enough at them. But that is one of the strategies that's pretty risky that I still like to include. Partially because it saves like a ton of time. Just like a lot of time over the actual route, and plus it's early on. So if I fail it a bunch of times and get stuck, I'm only on World 2. I haven't made it all that far. It's pretty easy to reset. I don't feel too bad about that. So now we're in between levels again. We get more conversation between our good friends, just hanging out, telling us how to use level pieces, talking about edamame. The pigeon really likes edamame. That's a theme that'll come back a few times. But now we're into World 3. The first 4 worlds are all pretty chill. This is actually 1-3 from the original game, although it looks a little bit different, rather than trees, or no, with trees, but the trees are a little more blocky than maybe you'd expect. So if you're playing, again, new or Mario 35, this level will look familiar. If you played the original game, this level will look familiar. But again, we do different sets of jumps because the way that we beat this level with the newer physics just looks a little different than the way you would beat it with the original physics. Alright. 3-2. I call it Birdsong Tower because one of the medals is just hearing the birdsong. This one's a pretty straightforward run and jump level. There's not too much to it. Forgot to hit the A button. That's smooth. The Birdsong Tower, the reason I give it that name is because one of the medals for this level is hearing the birdsong sound effect, and you get that by going to the top of this tower right here that we're going to completely skip. The medals for this game are these optional bonus challenges. This was not something that was generally in the original Mario Maker. This is something that Nintendo did add to Mario Maker 2, where you could have one challenge per game where it was a clear condition, and the goal would not spawn and would not appear until the player had cleared that clear condition. In this game, the medals are similar type challenges, like defeat all certain enemies, get all the coins, finish within a certain amount of time. But they're completely optional. They're just bonus challenges. So you're welcome to do them, but you don't have to. They're just there for swag. But actually, I guess there is a tangible advantage to them, which is if you beat both of them, you then unlock the level in editor mode, which means you can practice it, you can dissect it, and that's really helpful for learning and practicing the speedrun. This level may also look familiar. This is actually 3-1 from the original game. In this game, they put it in the underground theme. It is actually an overworld level in the original, but in the original, it's in a nighttime world. And so in order to emulate that nighttimeness in this game, they just put it in the underground theme instead. I remember that level looked so cool, or at least I thought it did when I was a kid. It's like, oh, the trees are white. This is the white tree level. This is so amazing. But unlike amazing levels, this is 3-4. This one is just a bit obnoxious. This is a definite case of enemy spam and an auto-scroller, which are two things that are not fun, I'll say. The entire point of this level is that you're slowly scrolling through Bowser's castle while an army of Lakitus are throwing fireballs at you. This is the most Lakitus I'd seen on screen until Mario 35 came out and people started realizing Lakitu strats were a thing. But this is just a whole swirly army of them, all trying to murder you with fireballs. There are strategies for this. For the most part, you want to stay on the left side of the screen because the Lakitus will always throw the fireballs toward you. And if you're on the left side of the screen, that means the fireballs will leave the screen pretty quickly. Versus if you're on the right side of the screen, they're going in the same direction as the screen scroll, so they'll stay around a bit longer, which is not ideal. But thankfully, you get a mushroom for safety. You don't actually need this mushroom that I have right now. You can beat the level without it. It is a little bit faster real time because getting power-ups slows you down. But at the same time, it's not worth it to die on this level at all. This level's not one that's fun to replay. Because it's a slow auto-scroller, it's a pretty significant time loss. So I don't get it in the first section. First section, I don't think you ever get a pattern that's impossible. Second section, you can get patterns that are either close to or actually impossible, and so it's not really worth it. It's not worth it at all. Here we go with our intermission again. What I'm doing, by the way, on the side during these is I have the levels open, and I'm slowly scrolling through because I don't know the levels, all of them by number yet. There are 88 of them, and the numbers are not very descriptive. But I do know them by the thumbnail pictures, and so on the side of my screen, I am looking at thumbnail pictures of the levels to make sure I'm prepared for the one that's coming up next. Most of the time when a level starts, you just run right. Some of them have something different, and so it's useful to know what level is coming up. This one, 4-1, is actually the first level from Super Mario Bros. 3, but it has just these giant stacks of enemies that sort of are all over the place, so that makes things a little more interesting. World 4 in general, so like I said, this game is intended to teach you different mechanics. World 4 in general is all about flying. That first level may not have looked like it, but that's the first level where you get the leaf power-up, so you can become like Raccoon Mario. Here you get the feather from Super Mario Bros. World. And so like this, again, this is all about flying. The first one is the raccoon tail, this one is the cape. Next up we'll get the propeller, and then we do air twirling. So it's interesting to see some of the worlds have these really strong themes that Nintendo has put out of like, what mechanics are you trying to learn? What mechanics are you trying to use? Because this is a game that's meant to teach you a lot more about Mario. And it's interesting, like with how many mechanics are in this game, how they managed to teach you about it in 100 levels. I say 100 levels, this particular mode only has 88. World 19 is considered more of a bonus challenge world. In order to unlock it, you do need to get medals from the other levels, and you have to have cleared the story mode. Those ones are ridiculously fun. I'm kind of sad they're not in story mode. But the story mode is 88 levels. The extra bonus challenge world, World 19, has an additional 12, so the total number of levels in this game is 100. I don't believe that World 19 unlocks anything, though. One of the ways that this game works is that as you beat these story mode levels, you actually unlock the mechanics behind them in the level editor. So when you start the level editor, you don't actually start with Spinies. You have to go through and beat the levels that contain Spinies, the world that contains Spinies in this mode, and then you'll be able to actually unlock them for your own levels, which is another interesting way of sort of gating things and making sure you understand how things work and you aren't overwhelmed by all of the choices up front. So like I said, World 4 is about flying, this level is all about the propeller suit. This is one of my least favorite power-ups in this entire game. I don't think I'm alone in that, and it's because, like most speedruns, you want to go fast, and unfortunately the propeller suit is not a super great going fast item. When you go up with the propeller suit, you're pretty much good to go, but when you're coming down, you'll notice on this next section that it's slow, and so a lot of times you want to try to drop to the ground faster using the down arrow, just so that you're not in that like ridiculously long twirly down slow animation for very long. And it is interesting, like some of the propeller levels, I think 8-1, it's kind of fun mechanically just because there are some things you have to do. You have to get used to the propeller tech, and in this game you do have to get used to most of the power-ups because the game will force you to learn and use them. At the same time, this one's just, it's not super fun sometimes just because it's like, this slow, painful, hurt, just too slow, too slow. Opposite of Sonic. So World 4 flying, 4-4 is all about twirling in the air. So this first part, nothing crazy, but then this next section of the level, it's difficult to die. There's not too many spots where you can, just because the entire point is learn how to twirl. And they didn't want you to get frustrated with this, so you'll see that like there's one-way gates to block you from completing the level if you don't do the twirl, but they won't actually kill you. You just have to retry the section that you're on. 280 pipe entry. Sorry. That section, if you do that extra like jump on the falling platform, you can get a timer time of 280 when you're going through the pipe, which is very fast. But it's kind of ridiculous because if you miss that, then you fall into that pit and you have to redo that whole section. So it's questionable whether or not that's worth it. To be honest, it's not, but I can't resist going for it because it's faster. I think I split a little bit early there, but that's okay. Pretty smooth World 1 through 4 so far. Like I said, that's kind of just standard stuff, pretty warm up, nothing too crazy. A lot of repeated levels from previous games in that world. Like we saw a lot of levels from the original game, at least one from Mario World. Oh no, we didn't see the Mario World one yet. The Mario World one comes later. We did see a couple from Mario 3 though. And again, I don't actually know if there are any new Super Mario Bros. U levels in this game. I think that game in particular went pretty heavy on slopes, if I'm thinking of the correct one. And Mario Maker 1, as you might remember, did not support slopes. Those were added in Mario Maker 2. So I think it's possible that they just didn't put any in because there weren't any that really matched. Oh, I did the first part of this level so cleanly and then I missed that jump, but that's fine. I'm just gonna take this one slowly too because now my rhythm's off and I would prefer not to die to these. You're supposed to hit the blocks and then that brings up a vine. And so if you hit that vine, then you can climb past those Koopas and it's a little easier to not make a mistake, not get killed by them, but waiting for the vine is a bit slower. So instead you can do some pretty careful jumps to jump up around them. The tricky part with that level is making sure that you don't hit the springs when you're jumping on top of them because otherwise those springs will launch you straight into those Koopas. And World 5 in general, as you'll notice pretty quickly throughout most of these levels, is generally about springs. So you saw them in the previous level. Here's our next level with even more springs. That was not exactly how you're supposed to do that section, but it's fine. This level is one of the few levels where there's a Kaizo trick that you can do that actually matters. I do not go for it because if you miss it, you die in those boos over there. And I'm not consistent enough at that particular spring jump to make it work. But this is one of the levels where if you're super into Kaizo tricks, then you will be able to beat it a little bit faster than what I just did. The IL definitely goes for that and uses that spring jump there above that boo circle, or not really boo circle, but boos on a rail. This next level is one of the few other levels in this game that is sped up with Kaizo tricks. I will be going for spring jumps in this one, but thankfully missing spring jumps in this level doesn't actually hurt you at all. There's backups for everything. The IL does not really use spring jumps. It uses a super fancy, or what I consider a super fancy bomb drop. that I have not yet learned. I definitely should learn it. There are backup strats for that one as well, but it's a bit terrifying. So that's an example of a spring jump where in midair I jump off of the spring, which you're not really supposed to do. Like, that's not Nintendo intended tech, but it is something that's possible. So you know what, why not? Second one will come later. Oh, there we go. Second one will come later in the game, or in this level. Basically what's going to happen right now is you saw me grab that coin. That's to give myself this shortcut. If I did not grab that coin, I would not have time to do this trick. Basically, that section of blocks right there is actually coins, and if you don't go fast enough... Oh, I didn't get the spring jump. And now my spring's too far down. Ah! Then you would have to go through a different section instead, and that section takes a long time, so it's not really worth it. If you go the bomb drop route and do the more advanced sort of Kaizo tech, then you would need to grab a shell from that previous section and do a shell jump up. But again, the nice thing about this one is it's optimized with Kaizo, with the spring jump route that I use. It's optimized if you use the Kaizo tricks and you nail the spring jumps, but it's not required. Like, you saw that I failed most of those spring jumps, and there was a recovery for every single one of them, so it's not something that you need to worry about too much. This level to me is kind of weird. It's the first time they show, I think, fast scrolling. So this is scrolling where, like, Mario kind of has to run to keep up. This section is not, this section is slow. But it's kind of an interesting inclusion here, because in the rest of this world, it's again all about springs and spring tech, and this level has 0 springs. So I honestly am confused as to why they put it here, but it is it's a fast level, so maybe they just figured this is where it went in the difficulty scale. So now you can see the screen is scrolling fast-ish. This is the faster scrolling speed for auto-scrollers. It doesn't really make that much of a difference for this level because this level is all about running. And you even get a star, and stars in this game make you move faster. So they're great for speed tech. Like, in general, if there's a star in a level, you almost always want to get it. But this level just sort of runs, moves quickly. Nothing too crazy, too scary. I'm gonna listen for the time. One of the things that is important in this level, like one of the few things you can do to speed this level up as an auto-scroller, is make sure you defeat all of the Bowsers at the end with a star. Similar to other Mario games, if you defeat Bowser by stomping on an axe, there's an animation and a sound effect that plays to show that you defeated Bowser by dropping him into lava. That is slow, and so if you take out Bowser using the Superstar, then that animation doesn't play and you save time on going to the next world. So for an IL that just times on when you hit the axe, it wouldn't make a difference. For a full game run like what I'm doing, that times in real time, it definitely makes a difference. Now we're on to World 6, which is also about springs. I don't know if Nintendo, I honestly don't know if there's a huge difference between these two worlds in terms of what spring tech they teach you. Or if Nintendo was just like, we've got so many spring things, we need to do all of the spring. But there's not too much to this level. That's really the only shortcut right there, is not jumping on that last spring. It turns out springs are actually also slow, so jumping on that middle spring there would have slowed me down and I would have still made it to the goal, but it's slower. Damage boosting and running along the bottom of the spring, like the platform that the spring is resting on, is a bit faster. It's a little risky, but there's a good setup for it. One of the background images of a dead fish, I think, is a really good marker for where you're supposed to make that jump, and it's not terribly difficult to line up. It's definitely risky to go for it, but you know, why not? Okay, so now I've got to do a huge amount of backup on this level, and I missed it. The strategy that I do for this level involves going underneath the bridge, because that's the strategy that I learned. And I should probably learn a different one, because this one is really difficult if you don't get it first try. So this is what it's supposed to look like. You sort of hold A after that initial jump and everything works. But if you miss that initial jump, because you go below the stage and all of the Koopas are all over the place, it's really difficult to recover, and I don't practice recovering enough. So I probably need to come up with a safer strategy for that, and I haven't done it, and so as you can see, it's a risk for me. Died. But we'll work on it. Oh, 6-3. So 6-3 is one of my least favorite levels. I'm gonna have to pay attention here. Nailed it. Okay. That's one of the only shortcuts I will actually take in this level. The rest of this level I will not take any of the risky strats. There's really only one. So this level is one, includes donut blocks, which are one of my least favorite things in Mario Maker because they're very finicky. Depending on where you hit them, you get different momentum, and so they're kind of difficult to make standard or to get consistently. On top of that, this level is an auto-scroller, so you're just kind of stuck, and on top of that, it's actually a platform scroller. Platform scroller is the term that I use to describe a level where the platforms are a limiting factor in how far you can get, where you have to follow a set of platforms to continue to move through the level. The reason that I don't like them is, one, usually they're like auto-scrollers and just slow, and you have to wait. There's very little you can do to speed up. But worse than auto-scrollers usually you just have to know when to hug the right side of the screen to get to the next screen transition and you're good to go. With platform scrollers, definitely for ILs, sometimes for non-ILs, and I won't be going for it here, you'll see me take very safe strats. What that means is, in order to get a good speed, you need to perform a death-defying jump right at the end. Because what you'll want to do is jump off of that platform and onto the final section that's usually solid as soon as possible. So in that previous section, I waited until some of the donut blocks had gone below the platform with the pipe on it, or the pipe above it. If you're doing the IL, you actually jump way before when I did. You jump before the donut blocks are even close to being underneath there, and so you end up performing this flying jump through space that is terrifying, for me at least, and very likely to cause you to die. And the problem with that is then you have to replay that entire first half of this level. My first PB of this did die there, and it was painful, and I never want that to happen again, so I completely have stopped going for a risky strat there, because although it does save, like, I think maybe 5 seconds, it's a significant time save. The risk is so high, and the penalty for missing it is so ridiculously high that it's not worth it. At least at the stage this game is at, you don't need those 5 to 10 seconds. I don't think it's 10, I think it's 5. You don't need those 5 seconds right now to get a good time and to continue to advance in this game. So it's not worth really going for something that risky. Right now, with how early this game is, so much more of it is about not dying. Like, not dying is the main thing that you need to do in this game. And I think that, you know, there's another runner that I know at least to some extent agrees. Personally, I think one of my current goals is to get the record. Like, I would like to have first. But on top of that, I think this game can go under 2 hours pretty soon. Like, I think we're not terribly far away from a sub 2 hour game. Oh, that was a mistake. And I would like to see that happen. Like, sub 2 hours would be really awesome. It makes it easier to say that it is a 2 hour game as opposed to like, well, it's a 2 hour game, but technically it's 2 hours and 6 minutes. And really, I think that the way that we get there isn't by like finding new strategies or uncovering some crazy thing or like nailing these ridiculous tricks. It's not dying. Like, most of the time lost right now is just with deaths. And I think that there's, you know, time saves for sure that we could be doing different strategies for. A little bit off on that split, but that's okay. I mean, there's different things we could be doing that are, you know, different strategies that would potentially save time, but I think for the most part, the majority of time losses right now are through deaths or other large mistakes. It's not through, you know, not taking the super hard strat, and there is so much time to save by just not dying. Like, my sum of best right now is 203, so it may seem like 2 is really difficult. And it's gonna be hard. I don't think it's gonna be like trivially easy to get. But I have never had a clean World 17 or 18. And right there I know that I have, you know, at least 2 minutes of time save, if not all 3, in that world alone. And I think there's a couple other worlds too where, like, I know I've made some mistakes, and I don't think that my splits right now have a clean version of those times. So while my current sum of best is 203, it's with the ILs. Oh, I had to take that slower because I messed up my first jump. With the way the ILs are and the strats that we use for the ILs, you know, I know it's possible. Like, we have more than 3 minutes of time saved based off of my last run. Or sorry, my sum of best. But it's cool to be on a game this early, right, where it's not hyper optimized. A lot of the levels are pretty clean. Like, there's a lot of them where we know we're doing optimal strats, or at least we feel very confident that we are. But there's still so much more that can be done with this game. And it's fun to like not to be able to get records without having to have absolutely perfect execution. Like, I hope we get there. I hope this game gets really hard to get good scores on, or good times on. But for now, it's practice and don't die. Like, most of this is, no matter, if you try to do a time save, but it's a risky one, and you're likely to die, don't do it. It's not worth. I say that again, though, after admitting that I do a really dumb risky strat on 2-4. My defense there is that, again, it's an earlier reset point, and it's just too fun not to go for that. The other defense I have is I actually haven't practiced whatever the non-shortcut strat is, so I actually would have to go learn the other strategy in order to be able to do it effectively. Like, I don't know what the correct movement is for that area if I do not have the P-switch in my hands. The reason that makes a difference is because with the P-switch, some platforms do or do not exist. So I'm used to running on platforms that would not exist if the P-switch was active. And so I would have to learn, like, what else am I supposed to be doing? Because what I normally do for movement would not work if I had hit the P-switch at the start of the level. I do die there a decent amount, though, so maybe that's worth it. 7-3, oh boy. So this one I don't think is an exact copy of an original Mario Brothers level, but it's very close to, I don't know if it's actually 8-3 from the original game, at the very least one of the, World 8 levels. It's lots of Hammer Brothers. This section is scary. I took that way slower than I normally would. These stairs are scary. Everything about the end of that level is just terrifying. You have the Hammer Brothers, there's a little bit of RNG with those, how are they working? It's a bit of a mess. You have this like broken staircase that you need to jump up with single wide platforms, and so it's like, better not miss that, that's gonna be annoying. I felt kind of bad for a while about how slow I take that, but after watching like other players play this level, and then again, people in Mario 35 playing a level that's similar to this, they take those stairs slowly too. So it's like, okay, I'm not too much of a wimp for not trying to take that at the speed of light. In the IL, you actually do, I think it's frame perfect stair jumps at the end there to get a good time, but thankfully, you don't have to do that for this run yet. We're not at the point where frame perfection is required. I bonked. You can get past that checkpoint flag without hitting it, but it takes some really precise jumps on the first section to do so. So if you miss it, that's okay. Nothing too crazy about this level though. Just sort of running. You get a shelmet. Shelmets are cool. Actually, I guess World 7 is all about shelmets. Because 7-1, you get the shelmet with all the chain chomps. 7-2, you get a shelmet and it's that auto-scroller with the stacked enemies. 7-3, you get a shelmet because you've got Hammer Brothers raining hammers down on you from above. And then this one, of course, you have a shelmet with the Potaboos. 7-3, you didn't really get to see all of the chaos that can be in that level, because if you stay in an area for too long, the Hammer Brothers are on a rail at the top of the screen, and they will just start literally raining hammers down, and you will absolutely want that shelmet. We go fast enough that they don't have time to do that, and so we don't have to worry about getting the shelmet. You still can, though, because, again, it's a little scary. 8-1 is one of the levels I mentioned a bit earlier that has a propeller, and this is one of the ones where it helps to know how propellers work. That first jump is like deceptively difficult to get right, and you need to know how propellers work and when you can hit the arrow in order to really nail it. The key there, I don't think it's, okay. The key there is that you can only hit down on the propeller if you're at least one block above the ground. If you are not at least one block above the ground, your input won't count and Mario will continue to fly upward. Why that's important is because that first ledge that you have to get on top of, like I said, Mario spinning sideways is really slow, so you want him to follow the ground quickly. In order to do that, you have to hit the down arrow at the optimal time, but if you hit it too early, you end up wasting a lot of time because Mario will just sort of fly out of the way. So it definitely pays. Like, I had a lot of trouble getting that consistently, and it's once I learned sort of that rule that you have to be at least one block up that it makes it much easier to see when I should be hitting that button. This level is ridiculous. It's all about Buzzy Beetles, and if you take the lower route, you get like a raccoon leaf, so you can sort of use that tail, fly around, makes it a little bit easier to stay on. if you take this top path, which is at least shorter in the IL, I still need to time it out officially for real time, because the IL sometimes has shorter things just because of the pipe transitions don't count in ILs, and they do in a real level. But this top path is at least shorter for the IL, so I take it. In the top path, you get this Kribo boot, and it is obnoxious to use on top of these. Sorry, that's my favorite hitbox in the game. It's obnoxious to use on top of these enemies. And the first time I did this level casually, I was trying to do this challenge, and this was the hardest level in the game for me, trying to take this route, because it's just ridiculous how difficult this gets. And how difficult like getting the boot timing jump down is if you haven't practiced it a lot. Now this level isn't too bad. I can say that now that the level's over. Once you get the hang of the timing, it's alright, but it's definitely a frustrating one to be sure. And I feel vindicated in my opinion on this because the very next level is a bonus level essentially. This is a level where you just get free coins. It is possible to die, don't get me wrong, have died here before. But for the most part, you're just going after free coins. And so Nintendo clearly knew that the previous level was an absolute mess and really frustrating, and this is their apology. This is the here's all the lives that you lost back. This one is actually hilariously difficult to get the IL for. So you may notice that this is actually in the fast scrolling style. So this isn't the normal scrolling speed. This is in fact the fast speed. This shows up as the hare, not the tortoise if you're looking at the level editor screen. And it has like a gajillion transitions. And with auto scrollers, the thing you need to optimize is transitions. So any level that has more of them is going to be just more difficult. I don't go for the optimized route with this because I am too paranoid about dying, especially this next pipe coming up. But in order to get the IL for this, you have to be nailing every single one of those transitions. And in a slow scroll speed, that just means holding right when you're close to that transition. In a fast scroll speed, it means you need to run at the side of the screen. If you don't, you'll end up bonking off of it and you can miss by like half a pipe's width. Compared to the optimal strat. And that's enough that you will not get the IL for this without those strategies. Polongsi, I hope I'm saying his name right, has a guide up for it on the forums. I have yet to really seriously try it. Partially because you don't really need it for the any percent run. Like it saves time, but it doesn't save that much time in real time. So you don't need to learn it if you're going just for any percent, but at the same time, like I definitely will at some point because I would like to be able to say I can get that IL. This level, very fast. This is actually from Lost Levels. So if you've ever played Mario Lost Levels, this is 1-1 from that game. You'll notice it's now like World 8. Like Lost Levels was an interesting game that picked up where Mario left off in terms of difficulty, not just in terms of style. So the Lost Levels are much more difficult than the original Mario levels. And that level, again, you can see it's way later than any of the other ones from the original game. 8-5 is an adventure. This is the best level for showing someone the difference between Mario 2 and Mario 1 hitboxes. It will look like I'm performing some pretty death-defying jumps here. If you have been watching Mario 2, it may look like I'm hacking even. But for Mario 1, this is actually just how spikes work. Like that corner that I cut, I think that kills you in Mario 2. But again, thankfully Mario 1 is a lot nicer with spike hitboxes, and so this level is not too terribly bad. There's definitely some like crazy jumps in this. There's definitely easy ways to die, but with the Mario 1 hitboxes, or Mario Maker 1 hitboxes, it's a lot safer than it would be in Mario 2, or Mario Maker 2. 8-6 is another kind of bonus level. It's another fast auto-scroller. The challenge in this level is getting 6 extra lives. The way you do that is by jumping on each of these sets of enemies without hitting the ground. So the first set of enemies is Goombas on these rails. The second set of enemies is these wigglers, and if you jump on every single enemy without dropping your jump or landing on the ground, you build up enough of a combo that each set of enemies gives you exactly 3 lives. So that's how you get the medals for this one if you were stuck on this at home. This level's pretty nice. It's kind of relaxing compared to some of the other ones. Interestingly, when I was first learning this game, I would actually, I couldn't run the entire game because I only knew some of the levels, but I wanted to still try running. I think partially just to motivate myself to show that I could do runs. And then also like to get used to the feeling of running a level as opposed to ILing it. With an IL, if you mess up even a little bit, you reset. And with a run, you have to learn how to recover and be able to move on from those mistakes. So I would run Worlds 1 through 4 and then eventually Worlds 1 through 8. So for a long time, 8-6, that level, was my final level. And so there's always sort of a like cheerful feeling when I get to that because it's like, hey, I finished, except I still have like 56 levels to go or something. I think halfway through World 10 is the official halfway point in terms of level count. In terms of time, I think it's actually halfway through World 11. Try this again. There we go. This level is an airship. It's very Mario 3, not only in terms of style, but that it's an auto-scrolling, slow airship that is not super fun to do. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about any of the like craziness down below. We can get up onto this section and just sort of chill for the whole level, and then wait for that final pipe to come in. There is a Bowser Jr. fight, as an approximation of Nice Boom Boom, but it's completely optional. You do not have to actually fight him. You get a medal for fighting and defeating him, but again, since you don't have to, in a speedrun, why bother? We just go ahead and skip. This is one of 2 Mario 3 airship levels with a Bowser Jr. fight at the end. The other one is, in theory, not optional, but in practice it actually is. Like, I don't think Nintendo really meant for it to be an optional fight, but there's ways to skip it. Because it is, again, a pipe placement that's not locked by anything. But it does work a little differently. We'll talk about that one when we get to it. That one can be a nightmare for sure. This one's a really cute sort of boo house. It has these little framed pictures of boos and of thwomps. The challenge for this one is ridiculously fun. It's get all of the boos to the end of the level. And so you end up like hurting a set of boos by like looking at them, not looking at them, trying to draw them closer to you and bring them with you from the start to the end of this level. It is one of the more, I think, creative challenges in this game, so definitely encourage trying that one out if you haven't already. Collecting 50 coins is pretty straightforward, so that's not as exciting of a challenge. Oh, 9-3. 9-3 is very, very dangerous. 9-3 is actually a really fun level because it's highly optimized movement. Like some of the new Super Mario Bros. U levels with wall jumping can be ridiculously fun just to get good at. And it feels really good when you do them well. But this one in particular happens to be pretty deadly if you make mistakes, because there's all of these, and that was a different sort of mistake, but there's all of these munchers around, and you're small Mario for most of the level, and actually all of the level besides the damage boost. You can become not small Mario if you're playing this casually, and that helps, but you know, we're speedrunning, we want to go fast, so like we skip that mushroom, we skip keeping our one in the fire bar section. There we go. That's what that jump is supposed to look like. Here's what this jump is supposed to look like. That was just not my best section, but you can see how dangerous and deadly this level is. Here's where we take that damage boost, because waiting for those fire bars is ridiculously slow. I messed up this section, and so I want to not die and take that a little bit safer. But this is one of the levels where you can really show off if you're good at this game. I unfortunately didn't do it here. I've done it before. You can go look at my IL. I think it's 2nd place right now. But you can really sort of show off your skill because there's so much skill involved in this level. There's so many very small, precise movements and small, precise corner cuts that you try to make. And so there's a lot of room to like really distinguish between someone who's running it well and someone who is still learning the level. Whereas some of the levels, like this one, there's not too much to do. Like this level, you can do pretty much whatever you want to. There's not a lot of defined strats you have to take because it's mostly just run and jump to the end. Nothing will get in your way if you're going fast enough. It's still a fun level, just because it's pretty fast, it's smooth, it doesn't take too long. But compared to 9-3, like if you think about all the movements on that level and you think about all of the work that goes into optimizing that one, you know, you can see why 9-3 is kind of a really cool level to have in the run versus 9-4 is just pretty standard. Up next is 9-5. I say that like it's exciting, but it is again an auto-scroller. This is, however, I think the only level in the entire set of 100 that is an SMB1 airship level. Airship did not actually exist in SMB1, so this is the only place where you can find it. And I actually love the airship remix that they did for this. We can just listen to it for a moment. It's not like it's... Oh my goodness, I can't believe I died there. That was, because I was trying to listen to music, I wasn't doing my normal movements and I just made a really bad mistake. But I love the music, and it's not like it's anything fancy or anything special. I just happen to really like the sound of it. And so, definitely, I've like actually just listened to this on repeat before at work, which is a little weird, but I like this song. Unfortunately, I did not do what I would normally do, so not that auto-scrollers have like things that you need to do to optimize, but there are things that I normally do. So this is how I normally play the level. I'm normally on these platforms way sooner rather than doing like a crazy, unnecessary, death-defying jump for those. And what that means is that I almost died to that thing. Whoa, I am getting way too excited about how this level works. And that means that, like, I was in a spot where I normally wouldn't be, and so I took a jump that I don't practice, and clearly that was a jump that I should not have taken. So unfortunate, this level is now pretty messy, a pretty significant time loss, which is unfortunate because this is not a level that should be. But hey, at least you gotta listen to music. Isn't the music cool? This is actually the only super scary part of the level for me, is that jump onto the platform. Because those buzzy beetles are really close to the edge. But the rest of this level isn't too crazy. I like to get all the red coins. It's not necessary. It is necessary in the IL if you want to finish as small Mario. If you want to finish as large Mario, you don't actually need to get them to tie the time. But there's just a small enough difference in the hitboxes of large and small Mario that you do not get the IL time as small Mario, even if you're running to the right edge of the screen the entire time. But for the speedrun, going in the door is slow. There's no reason to do it, just waste time. So instead, it's just, you can get them for fun, for style points, I guess. None of them are too dangerous, so it's fine to go for them and you don't really risk too much. Again, unfortunately, I got distracted by the music and just tried a jump that was not a smart jump to make. But that's okay. We'll keep moving forward. 9.6, we're back in airship theme, but for New Super Mario Brothers, and it doesn't really move. There's not too much to this one. Making sure I'm getting these jumps correctly though, because I do want to do that first part correctly. Oh boy, this is not going to be great. This is a level where you almost never tie the IL. Wow, I messed that up so hard. Alright, this is a level where you almost never tie the IL, because the IL, you can see there's a lot of conveyor belts coming backwards, and so you need to get some frame perfect jumps in order to get a triple jump at the end in order to make it up that last set of stairs. But usually I don't have too many problems with not dying, because I'll do something like this, and if I go fast enough, then there's no problems at the end. So that was an unusual death for me. This world is not going to look good. Usually World 9's not too crazy, but World 9 is going to be a fun adventure this time, so unfortunately we're going to definitely lose. I don't know, I think we'll lose time here. It depends on how bad my 9.7 and 9.8 were. Possible time save of 35, so if I nailed these next few, maybe not, but I think I may have lost over 35 seconds already just off of that auto-scroller mistake. So here we go. This level is run and jump, but that one jump right there is crucially important. If you miss that one jump, you end up having to go through a mini underwater section off to the left and sort of redo it over and over again. So that can be pretty frustrating. It's not like a crazy hard one to hit, but it's not like it's the easiest jump in the world either. So definitely worth practicing at the very least. Alright, and then 9.8, this is one of the levels where I'm not going to go for the strategy at the start at all. It is not worth it to do whatsoever. What am I comparing to? Wait, sorry, my splits are actually messed up. I'll have to look at that in between worlds. You can jump off of this platform and get to this right side one a lot sooner than what I just did, but it is incredibly dangerous. It is a completely blind jump, and it is 10,000% not worth for me, at least. I am not consistent at it enough to call that a good idea. I do get these checkpoints as well, even though they're not like super required, because playing it safe in a platform scroller is usually a pretty good idea. You don't want to have to redo things if you can help it. Get this one too. You can actually, and I think in the IL you save time by jumping up to this earlier, because then this platform can get ahead of the other one, the one on the bottom. But, you know, if I'm playing things safe for a run, it's behind. It just gives me a longer squiggly platform to work with. Here I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. After the fourth one is when you can safely jump off to this platform. Again, like most platform scrollers, the goal is to jump off of that final platform as soon as possible and make it to the end before the platform does. So that's one of the examples. Pretty sure that was the end of the world. Oh, ouch, off 1 minute. What's confusing though is like currently the time I'm running off of shows... Yeah, this is weird. It's showing 2:21 as my final time, and my actual best time right now is not that. So I don't know what it's doing there. It may be showing average, and I need it to stop showing average. Okay. I'm gonna do edit layout. So I currently have edit layout open. I'll be doing that in between levels now. But to 10.1. So 10.1 is actually from Super Mario Bros. 3. This is in the world where you get the boot. What you're supposed to do is use the boot to go past sort of all of these different... Ah, man. That jump is really hard. I didn't feel like I got a good start for it. You're supposed to use the boot to go past all these spinies and, you know, really make progress that way. But, of course, for speedrunning, it's slow to go get a boot. Why would I want to go get a boot? That doesn't sound like fun. So instead we do these, you know, careful... hopefully well done jumps into the middle of those spinies like that, and then we can skip getting the boot and still make it through without slowing down. This is a level where you can pretty much just run and jump, and if you jump correctly, you'll do fine. Like this section, it thankfully works out well that most of those jumps are just absolutely full jumps where I hold down the A button, so I don't have to worry about timing anything. Here, hold right when Mario's in the middle of the cloud, and that helps you cut that last corner pretty cleanly without landing on the munchers or bonking off of those wood panels. Okay, let's see. Splits. Alright, I'm also still trying to figure out what's up with my layout. Personal best. Oh boy, okay, sorry. Because I was looking at that, I wasn't quite sure what level was up. Oh, I hit that too early. Now we've got to wait for him again. So this level is a bit ridiculous. It's another boot level. This world is a lot of boot levels, I believe. Focusing a little bit on this part. This one can get pretty wild. We're gonna do a very dangerous looking jump here at the end and hope that I don't mess it up. There we go. That is pretty tight, and I think in my current PB I died there 3 times from just continually missing it. Oh boy. Sorry, lots of small mistakes on this one right now, and so if I'm calling things out like oh no or oh boy, it's because I've made a tiny mistake that maybe doesn't affect too much, but that, you know, is potentially going to throw things off for later. The whole reason we get the mushroom at the start of that level is entirely for that 1 damage boost, because otherwise it can be a little bit disastrous. Okay, and I'm gonna save these splits here in a second once I hit next. So yeah, we were accidentally comparing, save layout, we were accidentally comparing to, I believe, average. I don't know for sure, it said current comparison, but may have been something different. Okay, 10.3 is the first level of Super Mario Bros. World. It shows up ridiculously late compared to most of the other sort of first levels from other games, right? Mario Bros. 1 shows up as 1-1, Mario Bros. 3 shows up as 4-1, this one shows up all the way over here in like World 10. Which is really far on, and so I don't know if they thought this was legitimately the hardest one, or if, I think moles maybe were new and they didn't want to put those in too soon. Moles really aren't used all that often. They're kind of not common, but you'll see them again in 11.1. Alright, so splits, timer is back on track. My splits are now correctly showing my previous best, so we can do a real comparison there. I'm a little bit worried about what my other times are showing. I didn't think I was a full minute behind, but at the same time, I totally could be. There were some pretty bad deaths there. This level is an auto-scroller that you can optionally fight Bowser and Bowser Jr. on, but you can also just kind of ignore them and the level works fine that way too. So the nice thing about this one is they give you a Yoshi. Yoshi is one of the power-ups in the game where it doesn't cause the game to pause. Like if I get a mushroom, the game will pause for a moment during that animation of Mario powering up. With Yoshi, with Shelmets, the pause does not happen, and so Yoshi is what I call a free power-up, where it does not affect my speedrunning time to get a Yoshi. It does affect your speedrunning time in real time to get a mushroom or a fire flower. Let's go over Bowser. Yoshi is not quite as good as a Shelmet. Well, a little bit back and forth. Yoshi is good because you can recover him. So you have sort of multiple hits with Yoshi if you can get back to him in time before he runs away. And this level in particular, see there were a couple of different spots where there was a shallow dip, 1 block deep, 2 blocks wide. Those are Yoshi pits where essentially if you lose Yoshi, he will fall in the nearest of those pits and you have a chance to recover him. So unlike a Shelmet, you can sort of use Yoshi for multiple hits, which can be pretty convenient. That will show up a bit later, I think, in like 17.8 maybe? But unlike a Shelmet you don't slow down when you grab it. Mario's animation does not pause, does not change at all. When you get Yoshi, Mario loses his momentum, so that can be a bit difficult to work around. Gonna need to focus for the start of this one. Alright, we're good. The start of that level, it's really easy to get stuck if you don't jump very carefully. And it's very difficult to recover because you start off small and those spinies are incredibly deadly when you're small. This section is not fun to optimize. Getting up an invisible elevator at some points of springs is one of the reasons that I do not like doing aisles for this level. Once you're past that, it's not too bad. The stair at the end is kind of hilarious, just a bunch of moles show up. This is what I meant by the other mole level. But thankfully, as long as you stay above them, you can just bounce off of them and get to the goal that way, so there's nothing too crazy. But, and you unfortunately can't see this because I've missed timing World 11 in both my original run of this and my most recent PB. But this level, or World 11 in general, is one that can be a struggle for sure. So I'm glad that I got 11.1 first try, because I can definitely get stuck on that first part of the level, especially if I'm not careful. This one is another cape one, nothing too crazy. There is one jump that I am now nervous about after having missed it exactly once, but once is enough that it's like, oh, please don't miss it again. I do small jumps in this part to avoid getting enough speed for flying. That's the one jump that can kill you, which is that one Koopa Paratroopa, because that is the only one that's over a pit. The rest of these are over spikes, and since you start with a cape, you've got 2 hits before you need to worry. But this level is pretty straightforward as long as you don't do anything too crazy. Like there's not, it's a good one to start off on. Like if you're learning the speedrun, would encourage maybe trying this level out in particular, because it's pretty, it doesn't take too long to get the IL time, and then you'll have an IL time on a leaderboard for a speedrunning game, which is pretty darn cool. 11.3 is not one of my favorite levels. It is one of my least favorite levels. It is an auto-scroller, but it is one that, for me, the ending feels very deadly. I don't know if it's, just me or if other runners feel this way. But at the end of it, there's a section where you need to bounce on top of an enemy called the Dry Bones. And bouncing on top of enemies usually isn't too bad. Like, I don't usually mind doing it. But the hitbox for Dry Bones threw me for a loop for the longest time, because Dry Bones have, they're Koopas, but that are skeletons. And so they have like a head, they have a shell, they've got some feet. And I always aimed for the head because that was the part that was sort of easiest to track, easiest to see. Unfortunately, aiming for the head does not work. You can fall through them if you do it that way. It's much safer to aim for their shell or their feet. And so once I learned that, this level got a bit better, but it's still pretty easy to make a mistake and mess up on this section. So I'm gonna get a safety mushroom just because there have been some not so great mistakes so far today, and I'd rather not have this be one of them. The problem is the safety mushroom only really helps on the larger dry bones. These small ones, because they're over pits, if you miss them, you're just dead. So I'm gonna focus. Alright, we're good. Whew. That ending part makes me so nervous compared to other things. Because it's again at the end of an auto-scroller, so if you die, you lose a lot of time and it just feels really bad because you're just sort of going through and waiting to get back again. But thankfully we made it, so no worries there. 11-4 is another platform scroller where things can you just die at the end of it. I'm gonna go for the actual strats at least once, and then if not, I can do the backup of just playing the level normally. The nice thing about this game is, and I think a couple Mario games, is that playing the level normally is a good backup strategy. It's usually slower, but it's a Nintendo-made level for a mainline Mario, or not mainline Mario game, but like in the style of mainline Mario games. So it's intended to be something that sort of anyone can play, anyone can beat. So that helps when it comes to safety in this game and like the ability to recover if things aren't good. Actually, I was not in a good spot. What you're supposed to do is at that right corner, you are supposed to jump, and that is not what I did. Taking that right side jump shortcuts that entire diamond section and saves some time on this level, but I was not set up properly on the platform to be able to make that happen. You need to be on the left side of one of those skulls. I usually prefer to be on the left side of the first one, and I was on the second one and not all the way on the left, so I didn't feel confident that I would make that jump. If you don't make that jump too badly, then you end up dying in the lava. Oh shoot! Why do I never split World 7? Oh my goodness, sorry, World 11. The reason I never remember to split World 11, and it's so frustrating because I need to have a time for that, and this is actually a really clean World 11. I did a good job on it. Would have been great to have as part of Sum of Best. Damn it. It's because that last level never feels like a Bowser fight. It never feels like a true end of level, end of the world stage, and so it just never quite registers in my head that I should be doing anything with it. Oh man. But now we're on the World 12, which is all about Koopa clown cars. Which is another interesting thing that I don't think many Mario games have an entire world dedicated to Koopa clown cars. But there's a set of 4 levels that are all very much about specifically Koopa clown cars. Koopa clown cars are interesting because the movement is just very different from the main Mario movement. Like most Mario movement is run to the right, jump at specific times. Nothing too crazy there. Car movement is a lot different, where it's omnidirectional and it drifts a lot, it lags a lot, so there's a lot more that you need to do to try to control it, especially around corners or near lava. So moving and optimally moving in clown cars can be a much different challenge than the main game, which makes it difficult to practice and optimize because, again, such a different mechanic, but can also be fun because it just is such a different challenge. It's exercising a different skill set. So definitely have a love-hate relationship with these. If I'm doing them well, it's like, man, these are the coolest things ever. If I'm just messing up constantly, then it's like, these are the worst idea ever. Why did Mario ever, or why did Nintendo ever make this? This level is the closest we get to like having like a shoot 'em up game or like a Star Fox type game in Mario, I think. Where essentially this entire level is just a slow auto-scroller where I'm going through and absolutely blasting the heck out of enemies with my Fireball Koopa Clown car. This midpoint is where we get the Fire Flower, which is where things really start to get fun. You've seen that until now I've been shooting 1 Fireball every time I do a charge. I now get to shoot 3 at a time, which means that I can just take out a whole swath of enemies. The medals for this level involve getting high scores, which is, again, a really odd one for Mario. It's one of the more unique challenges in the game. And the way that you get the high score would be to leave all the enemies on screen and then take them all out, you know, sort of in one set of fireballs and getting a combo for that. But that's not necessarily the safest thing to do. If you're going for 100%, you'd want to do that, but for any percent, you can. It's just, I find it safer to just take everything out. I don't want anything to get close to me. I have more fun trying to take out like literally every block on the screen, so that one is one that, you know, has to work for a little bit more. But yeah, this level is, it's actually just really fun. The Bowser fight at the end, so what we're moving toward is a Bowser fight. And that Bowser fight is with, you know, Mario and a Koopa clown car. And that makes it really interesting because it's one of the more unique Bowser fights in the game. A lot of times this game we don't actually fight Bowser anyway. But in this case, you want to be hitting Mario with all 3 fireballs as often as possible. And so it makes things a lot more challenging. Like, you really have to be paying attention to where Bowser's at, how he's moving, and try to like continually stay close enough to him that all 3 of your fireballs can hit, but far enough back that you have time to respond if he shoots a fireball back at you. Because if you get hit by a fireball from Bowser in that fight and you lose your fire flower power-up, you're suddenly doing 1/3 the damage to him that you would otherwise be doing, and that slows down the fight tremendously. So that fight is a really fun one for me. Like, I actually really like practicing that fight. 12-3 is not one of the more fun levels to practice. It's again more Koopa clown cars. This one's mostly just movement optimization until near the end where you get a blooper battle, and that, oh, like it is one of my least favorite things. Because the bloopers are moving around a whole bunch, somewhat randomly. Oh, hi Goomba. I normally don't pick the Goomba back up, but I guess he wanted to be friends. Unfortunately, I ditched him. These bloopers right here at the end, if you're going for the IL, they can be ridiculously annoying. If you're going for just the normal run, I take it really slow because I don't want to deal with them. Because you're small Mario throughout this whole level, if any of the bloopers hits you, like you're dead. And they happen late enough in the level where it's a really inconvenient time loss. So dealing with them is difficult, the angle you're coming in at them is hard. It's not fun at all, but thankfully, like, you know what? You can play it safe. So in this case, I decided not to go for anything crazy. I hung back, I fired at them from afar. Once they were all dead, I moved forward to try to complete the level. So you can take this safely. Again, we're early enough in the speedrun where there's a lot of options of which levels do you want to be aggressive on and go for crazy strats. Like for me, 2-4 I want to be aggressive on. And which levels do you want to just play safely, go for the consistent play, and just try to finish it every time. This is the final level in World 12. It is unsurprisingly another Koopa clown car level. This one, the movement gets really optimized if you're careful near the end. One of the things with the clown car is that if you dip into the lava, you start going way slower. And so I'm going to try not to hit the lava here. But it's difficult because, oh shoot, okay, I'm safe. You do not want to hit the spikes because then the clown car does that. And if you do that at the wrong spot, you will run into the spikes and die. So it's definitely dangerous. So you do need to be very, very careful with that. But oh, thankfully we didn't die there. I did hit the spikes at the end. I need to practice that one a lot more. That's one of the ones where like I really should go back to the lab and really work on optimizing that movement again because I'm not playing it very cleanly right now. But that's the Koopa Clown Car world. So yay, World 12, super exciting. It's a very interesting change of pace for this game. Again, the movement is so different than what you would find in the rest of the game that it's a very unique challenge to work on and practice. World 13. I don't know that there's really a theme to this one that I found. I would have to like look at the actual character dialogue between stages to see what new mechanics it was trying to teach me, but that's slow, not gonna do it. Maybe some other time we'll go through and try to figure out what the mechanics are for all of these, but for now we get the propeller again. You can see there how slow it is to come back down. Nice. Sorry, that section, it's easy to... Oh, hi. We're just gonna go slowly here. Okay, that was kind of funny. That's what I was worried about. Oh my goodness. 13-1. I'm not great at it. That last section is just... I was pretty off, unfortunately. So there are chain chomps, and chain chomps can be random, but those last ones are not. And I don't know if it's because you're running fast enough. I don't know if it's because Mario's movement is always so consistent. But that one chain chomp that killed me will always kill you if you do not go fast enough. And I should have expected that to happen. I wasn't sure it was going to happen with the damage boost that I accidentally took. But, oh well, we get a chance to redo this one. And now I'm just going to wait for him. And of course he just doesn't go in that time, because why? Oh man. Chain chomps, bro. Chain chomps are one of the, like, this game overall doesn't have too much RNG in it, but chain chomps are one of the sources of it. And hilariously, that chain chomp isn't one of the RNG ones, but chain chomps in general can be a bit annoying in this game, unfortunately. So the other sources of RNG are with Bowser and Bowser Jr. movements. That really only comes into play on a few levels. And then when pipes release power-ups and enemies is really a big one. And I'll try and talk about it because this game, or this level, is ridiculously slow, and I should have waited to do this, but I was bored. When pipes release enemies is like a very, very big deal. So if you remember like levels where you need a, or I'm thinking of, I want to say 4-2, where you need the feather power up so you can get the cape right away. When that feather falls out of the pipe is RNG. And if you are grinding for the IL, you need to restart the level over and over until it comes out soon enough for you to get it without stopping. And that is, I actually don't know if you need to. The IL is a bit forgiving for that one. But that can be really frustrating that that's just part of this game. So unfortunately, pipe RNG is a thing. I did that way too early. This is my bad. If I missed the cycle, I missed the cycle. Oh my goodness. But you know, it's not too crazy different. There's not too often that's like a super big deal. This level, unfortunately, is like Nintendo showing they can build contraptions, and I made a mistake on when I activated the previous flying platform, and so I missed a cycle of when I could have picked up the muncher. This level is not fun at all. It's just a bunch of waiting for cycles. It is possible to skip some of this level with Kaiser spring jumps, but it's really difficult, or at least I haven't tried it and practiced it enough to want to go for that. So maybe that's something I'll work on, because spring jumps aren't too terribly bad, but we need to practice a lot more. We need to actually practice it and get it even once to be able to bring it in. But at least that one's out of the way. That one's like a weird, it's one of the few like puzzle-y, not really puzzle levels in the game, so it's kind of an odd one out in terms of like how this game works in the style. This one is where Nintendo shows, I got the ascending jump, I shouldn't have gone for that. This is the one where Nintendo shows that they can do aesthetics. This level is extremely pirate themed, where you've got a bunch of ships running around, you've got skulls going everywhere, cannons firing. It's actually just like a really cool level to look at. For the speedrun, you don't get to see it. You don't get to see the chains formed out of donut blocks. You don't get to see all the cool stuff below deck. This is a really fun level to just play and explore, but again, speedrunning, want to go fast, and unfortunately going fast means not stopping and smelling the roses, not stopping and looking at the pretty decorations and the effort that Nintendo put into that level. With 100%, you probably would get to see a lot more of it, although I think 100% in that one is just about defeating all the dry bones. Medals in this category for 100% are also really fun. This level will not look too difficult. It is an auto-scroller with bouncing enemies. You just sort of jump over them. They're not really a threat. You get plenty of mushrooms. It's not too big of a deal. But the challenge for this one is actually to beat the level without jumping. And you'll notice that there are Goombas coming along toward me, and normally you would always jump to defeat a Goomba. With this one, you need to time when you run off of those no blocks in order to make sure that you are over where the Goombas show up at the right time. So this level, like, to get the IL on is actually pretty tricky. Like, you do need to practice it and understand the patterns and like when to run, when to jump, when the enemies are going to be coming, so you know when to go in and avoid them. For the speedrun, most of it comes from the fact that I want to be on the right side of the screen because it's an auto-scroller, so I want to be ready as soon as possible. Oh my goodness. to finish the level. So you can see that like I'm gonna come into this pipe a bit late. The screen was already past it. And that means I lost time, but it's thankfully not too much time. But it's still frustrating to like miss those small things. So with an auto-scroll, you want to stay on the right side of the screen so you're ready for that final transition, which means you have less time to react to the incoming enemies. And so if you don't memorize the layout, you'll make mistakes like what I did and run into things you shouldn't have. 13.5 is fun. It's one of the levels that has a very, very different route between the IL and the any % run. One of the reasons for routing differences is in ILs, the timer goes off of in-game time, and in-game time is paused when Mario goes through a pipe. So pipe transitions are essentially free when you're going off of in-game time, so for ILs. For any %, we time with real time, and so going through a pipe costs you like 3 seconds going in, 3 seconds going out, something like that. And so it's incredibly slow, and unless the subworld area that you're going into with the pipe makes up at least that much time, it's not worth it. And this is one of the levels where going through the subworld saves you like 2 or 3, maybe 4 seconds on the in-game timer. But because of how long the pipe transitions take in real time, it is faster in real time to take the top route. So if you look at the ILs for this, they will look nothing like what I just did. They will go into the subworld early. There's a whole bunch of optimization you have to do there in terms of like making sure you're on moving platforms as much as possible. But for the any % run, we instead get to use that fun propeller hat to jump through the level, but that one's not too bad. This one's very much about timing at the beginning with these not fire bars, fire jets, I suppose. And like pretty much the optimization for this one at the start is all about trying to hit those at the right time. The second half of the level turns into instead of very frantic sort of running and jumping, where you have these saw blades and you're trying to jump over them in these 1 block high spaces, which is really satisfying when you get it right. If you're having trouble with those jumps, the best advice I've got is to spin earlier than you think you need to. That one in particular, like I've died a lot of times, and I notice this when I'm spinning when I think I should, and if I spin a little bit early, I seem to be able to always get through. I also don't run straight through the Bowser section. Bowser, this is one of the RNG pieces where Bowser can jump there, and if you are running and jumping and just going for the goal and Bowser jumps, you usually run right into him. So I'll do a small pause on that last platform just to make sure I can check that Bowser isn't jumping, and then I can get over his head cleanly, or I can wait for him to finish his animation so I can go on by. But yeah, that's World 13 down. On to World 14. Again, at this point, I think that the concepts from Nintendo become a little less clear. There's less themes to the overall worlds, but some of the levels themselves will still have themes. This level's theme is boo circles. So there are a ton of boo circles in this level. This is one where it's on this rail at the beginning, but it always sort of feels invisible because with the boo circle, there's no center that you can visually see. So it's hard to see where it's going along that rail, and it makes it a little difficult to track if you're not used to that sort of mechanic. Standing in that spot is always safe. It is also entirely unnecessary because you could stand just on the right side of the platform instead, but it looks cool, so you know, side points. Plus this is an auto-scroller, so there's not too much to do. The key thing with this auto-scroller though is it is important to keep this mushroom. Like, I did not just get this mushroom for safety. This mushroom is intended for Nintendo intended skip a bit later. That boo circle transition right there is usually where you'll lose your mushroom if you do. There's not a ton of room there to get past that second, or to get through into that second circle without taking damage. But here's where that shortcut comes into play. So there's these bricks here. If we ground pound through them, we end up at the flag right away. If you are a small Mario, you cannot ground pound through blocks, and so you have to take a bit longer of a route, wait for some donut blocks on the right, and then you'll be able to get to the goal. So that level is one of the few ones where we take a power-up to take a shortcut, and it's very important not to lose it because you do lose time, not just from the damage and the screen freeze during that damage, but as well from the actual fact that you can no longer go through the same route in the level as you could before. This level I'm going to focus on a bit. I don't know, maybe I should just keep talking because sometimes I do better when I talk through these levels. So this one involves a lot of, like, I don't know if there's a better strategy for it, but there is a lot of small, precise jumps and not a lot of room for error. So while this one is majority a run and jump level, it is one of, in my opinion, the harder run and jump levels because of how tight some of these spaces are and how little room you have to jump in some of these particular spots. And you can see that through the fact that I've died now twice. Especially since you stay small Mario, again, we don't get power-ups, we're trying to go fast. Some of these jumps there's not a lot of room for. It's definitely safer to do, you know, strats where you bonk a bit more often, but they're slower and so we try to go for it. This is one of the things where I'm going to take it slowly. You can jump up there and get that giant shell sort of in one fell swoop and save time that way, but that one is definitely risky and I don't feel confident in going for it. And since it's especially right at the end of the level, currently usually not worth it for me. You have to have a pretty clean stair climb right before then in order to get there early enough to make that cycle work, and I usually don't feel like my stair climbs are all that clean for that particular level. It's also a weird staircase where it's not like a normal, you know, try to frame perfect stair jump. It's a weird offset one that you don't practice very often. This level, like I said, at this point the worlds don't seem to have as cohesive of a theme, but the levels start to. This one is all about crushers. So Nintendo, I think, did a good job designing this level, where the first half of this level is underwater, which means the crushers move slowly, you get lots of time to react to them, you get lots of chances to realize how annoying their hitboxes are. Those hitboxes extend all the way out to the end of the spines, and sometimes it feels like beyond, so they're very deadly. But like, again, pretty chill, smooth, take your time sort of thing. Then you get in the second half of the level and it's like, okay, but now here's crushers for real. This is a run and jump section that is one, fast, and two, the world is collapsing behind you as you run past it, so it feels kind of like you're in an action movie. That is intentional damage just because it's really difficult to avoid it. And there we go, there's the level. You can actually skip that checkpoint because you don't need to damage boost, but if you die on the second half of the level after skipping the checkpoint, you have to replay the water section, and replaying the water section is, I don't think, worth it ever at all, ever. So definitely not something that you want to do if you can avoid it. So as much as you can skip that checkpoint and it saves you about 3 seconds between getting the power up and then hitting or getting the damage later on, I do not consider it worth. I do not go for that. This is unfortunately not a particularly exciting level. It is another auto-scroller. In this one, if you're playing it for medals, it can get a little more interesting. Your goal is to defeat all the Goombas and to hit all these invisible flying blocks. I do not hit the invisible blocks when I'm playing because they can mess up these Podoboo patterns and they can make this a little more inconsistent than I would otherwise like. It's not like you add a ton of danger to the level, but it adds, you know, some risk. And while there are some places where I like to add risk for swag points, this is not one of them. This is a very long auto-scroller. I do not want to have to ever go back to the start of this one at all. The key thing with this auto-scroller is just knowing sort of when to be ahead of and when to be behind these, you know, fireball sets. And later on as well, when do you want to just, wow, I almost just ran into them. When do you want to hug the right side of the screen for, again, those screen transitions? For that section, I like to be behind them specifically for that stack of 2 Goombas right there at the end. That can be a little tight to grab if you are in front of them. It is possible, but I find it less risky to stay behind them. Here's one of the spots where it just helps to know that the end of the section is up next, so that you can continue to run to the right and be ready as soon as that pipe is ready for you. Hi, Goomba. The second half, you do get a mushroom, so it's even safer than the first half. That is sort of a required power-up. You can't dodge that midpoint, which is kind of nice because then you don't feel bad about getting it. Like, there's some midpoints that like I'll try to skip because it's slower to get them, but then it's risky, right? If you die, you reset a lot further if you don't have that midpoint. This level's nice because, you know, you get the midpoint, you can get it guilt-free because you're not losing any time. Then the game just sort of forces you to have that midpoint ready to go. Thankfully, this level usually is not too bad. Again, now I have this power-up, so I have an extra hit if I make a mistake. But as long as I know what's coming up, I shouldn't take a hit. You know, brave words, but we'll see. These are my second favorite hitboxes in the game because they just look amusing when they go past and don't hurt me at all. That part is entirely safe as long as you're holding that right side of the screen. This section, I think you can dodge these by holding the right side of the screen, but there's a Goomba near the end of this pattern of Potoboos, and so it's worth it for me at least just to do a little more complicated jumping over them so that I don't have to worry about those two Goombas. We are now at the end of the level, thankfully there's not too much here. I look for the chain along the bottom of the screen next to the axe to let me know when I should be doing my jump up into the axe. But that's the end of this world. Awesome. It's like you could have saved a lot more time. Yeah, I definitely could have and did not. 14-2 was a disaster mess of deaths, but that's okay. 3 deaths on one level is usually it's pretty bad. But I am still ahead of my current PB, so you know what? I'll take this. Let's just keep this rolling. Next up is World 15. The beginning of World 15 has some levels that can be definitely a headache. Actually, all of World 15 can be a headache. 15-3, though, usually isn't too bad. But here we go. 15-1 is another Yoshi level. Yoshi levels are generally not my favorite. Partially, Yoshi's flutter, similar to the propeller twirl, is just a slower movement. And I messed that up. I'll just keep moving. Similar to the propeller, is just slower. And so you try to avoid using it, but you end up needing to, so that can be frustrating. Like, I find that a lot of small time lessons in this game aren't super meaningful right now in the any % category, but they're frustrating, and they can tilt you if you're not careful, because it's like, oh, I should have gotten this. Oh my goodness, I missed it. Oh no. It's the end of this level, and one of the reasons this level is not very fun is that very last jump, and I should have tried to bail and go backwards, but I did not. That very last jump, you have to land, and if you don't, you die, and you go all the way back to the start of this level, which is really not fun. I have been doing okay with it in practice, so I haven't been going too crazy trying to make sure I'm nailing it or anything, but clearly I'll need to practice it some more. So we get to now re-look at this level, and you can see that it probably already looks different than it did the first time. Because I'm probably doing a few more of these smaller optimizations that I missed the first time through. Okay. This looks fine. There we go. Oh, that's what level 15-1 is supposed to look like. Sorry for the loud sigh of relief there. Anytime I get past one of these tricky levels, it's frustrating that I made that mistake. It's frustrating that I lost that much time by dying right there at the end. But it's a relief that at least I got through it. At least I don't have to replay that level in this run. Like, we can just keep moving on. 15-2 is one of the levels where, wow, I wish there was a checkpoint. And it's only because, you know, I'm trying to do a speedrunning strat. The actual level I don't think is too mean, wouldn't need one. But this is another, like, very classical looking Mario 3 airship level. And not just because of the Mario 3 style, but just the way they've laid out the stage feels like it could be from Mario 3. Potentially in World 8, the Dark World. I believe that's World 8. When they have sort of that airship, like Bowser's Air Force level, it feels like that. There's lots of small platforms, small ships floating around. It's not fast level though. I don't remember if the actual Air Force level is fast. I think it might be. But the beginning of this level isn't too crazy. Like most Mario airship levels, you have this leaf power up, you just kind of stay to the right, take out these Monty Moles before they can attack you, and you stay pretty safe and you're pretty good to go. One of the differences, again, between this and older Mario games is that enemies do not respawn. In Mario 3, if you defeat the Monty Moles, they just pop back up. In this game, once I defeat them, they're permanently gone. They will not continue to respawn, which makes these airship levels in Mario Maker even safer, I think, than they were in the original. This is the part that turns into a mess. This is the second Bowser Jr. fight I mentioned, and I mentioned that this one involves a potential shortcut. I'm not gonna get the shortcut. And we're gonna get a safety mushroom, because this level is like that. I think I'm on my third hit for him though, so I'll just do the third hit and call it good. Essentially with this level, you can get into this upward pipe is where you're trying to go, and you can get into it early one of two ways. One is bouncing off of Bowser Jr.'s head, so you lure him to that side of the screen at the right height and then jump off of his head, and that's what I was trying to do, and you get into the pipe that way. The second backup you also saw me try and miss was you grab a shell and do a shell jump off of the right side of the screen, and you can get to the pipe that way. The shell jump is very slightly... Actually, I don't know. I think the shell jump is very slightly faster, but I think Blongsy might have released a new strategy that I just haven't had time to take a look at yet. So I will have to go look at that one and see where that level is now officially. That was a panic moment. There we go. This level is pretty close to a run and jump. There is not too much happening on it. There's only a few jumps at the start that can be a little messy if you're not careful. So I stayed a bit quiet there. I apologize, just because it's helpful to focus and make sure I don't miss those Koopa jumps, because with the Koopas moving, it's pretty easy to, if you're not paying attention and not careful, miss aim where you're going to land and have the Koopa's vertical movement actually end up killing you in midair. Yeah, 15-2, that Bowser Jr. fight, pretty dangerous. 15-3, pretty straightforward. 15-4 is another platform scroller, so you already know what that means. Stupid hard jumps near the end. This first jump in this first section, I have stopped going for because I am not consistent enough at it. There are so many things that can go wrong with this jump that I don't find it safe to do in runs. Normally I would have ran to the right already and jumped off of this platform onto this spike right here, and then damage boosted. Oh, I'm apparently trying to do something dumb. And then damage boosted into this section with the munchers, and run through that and then get to the end. I am not supposed to try to jump there. I think I was trying to demonstrate this is the dangers of doing commentary. This and the auto scroller death in the Mario 1 airship have now, I think I'm both going to attribute to the fact that I was trying to talk and explain things and not do what I would normally do. So yeah, dangerous indeed. But the damage boost is hard. So one, landing on that spike is pretty precise. You have to make sure you're matched and get there correctly. The second part, oh man, this was slow. The second part is that you have to do a jump after doing a damage boost, and that sounds like, oh, what's the difference? The problem is it's hard to time a jump out of a damage boost because you have to know when the damage boost is going to end and when you're going to get control of Mario again. And so that particular damage boost jump, it can just be really difficult to pull off, and I miss it more often than I get it, which means it's not worth it to do in a run. This next one, fingers crossed, I'll get. I do go for this one, even though this one looks like it's harder, but we'll see. Focus for a second. Oh, I was early. Oh my goodness, I could have saved it if I had held the button. Dang, this level is not going well right now. I'm kind of sad about that. I normally don't do too bad on this one. But I was nervous and I jumped early, and that was entirely my own mistake. The second jump is actually, for me, the easier of the two. And so I do go for it in runs, but like anything, you miss it and you're stuck on a really slow platform scrolling level, and you can see right now my time just ticking away as I lose it from making these mistakes. Like I'm still ahead. I think I'll still probably be ahead of my PB after this level, but it's not going to be nearly the amount of time that I would have liked. 3 minutes was a really nice time lead. Definitely would have preferred to keep that instead of this. Here we go. And you can see with this one as well, it's a damage boost one, so that's part of it, is that Mario's not running consistently to the right, so if you are not careful with when you do your jump and you just sort of do it when it would feel normal to do, you'll end up trying to jump in the middle of the damage boost and your jump will get eaten. You won't actually move, make any progress, so you need to be a bit careful with those. End of this level, that jump is pretty safe. You can take it pretty safely. You don't have to go too crazy. And then the Bowser, usually you have a mushroom at that point from the flag. Since you get the sort of free mushroom at the checkpoint, that last Bowser section, even if you hit the very first fireball, I think you damage boost through the axe successfully, so there's really not too much that you need to worry about with that one. That's one of the, like, the end of that level is so chill compared to the jumps that come before it. Oh well. So World 15 did not go super well for us today. Worlds 11, 12 did. World 9 as well was a bit of a mess. Missed a couple things in World 14. That's pretty common for me. But now we're on to World 16, so let's see if we can take this through. This one has donut blocks, so already I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's it's not too crazy if we can do it correctly. So here we go, get past the first set. Here's the first one that you can miss in this time. Oh, I just missed all of that. Okay. You can clear that gap without having to come down here. There we go. Oh, you can clear that gap without needing to go down to like the lower section, but again, donut blocks are finicky. You have to land pretty precisely on them to get things to work, as you can see from that. Oh boy, we're gonna have to go for the slow backup. You do have to land on them pretty precisely to get things to work consistently, and that can be, we'll call it a headache, because there's not a lot of great indicators. I find it a lot harder to land these precisely than I do to land on a moving platform precisely. So this level was not great. I definitely lost a significant amount of time there, but we got through it without dying. We got through it without needing to reset, so I'll still count that as okay. The end of that one, if you like run those saws, is really miserable. You can skip waiting there at the end and go pretty early on, but again, if you miss it, you lose a lot of time. You can actually die if you miss it too badly, so for me, it's not worth it. I'm not consistent enough at that particular strat to want to put it into the run. Then we get this level though, which is just sort of a fun one. I made a mistake on it anyway because I'm overthinking things today, unfortunately. Normally you should have large Mario, you wouldn't take that damage boost and you sort of run through, but thankfully this level is pretty clear. You just get the star and you run for it. So not too much to that one. I was thinking too much and I missed when I was supposed to jump on the Buzzy Beetles to jump through the star, but thankfully you get a mushroom at the beginning, so it's not too bad of a level to make a mistake on. 16.3 unfortunately has the bonus music, which is my least favorite music in the game. But the level's kind of a fun one, where for the first half, I do spin jumps on the second half of every single platform. So I'm jumping on the right edge of each of these. Just each of them. This middle section kind of is more freestyle, which is why I guess I made a mistake. The middle section, there are ways to try to do it with like complete consistent movement, but there are really tight gaps with the strategy that I found for it, so it's actually usually better to just sort of go for it. But that does mean that it's the part where you're most likely to make a mistake, so that's where the mistakes are happening today. Maybe I'm just getting a little tired. It's a long run. There we go. And then the second half of the level, you always do a spin jump in the middle of the platform, so it's just kind of a fun trade-off between spin jumping at the end, spin jumping at the beginning, just sort of playing back and forth between those two. Definitely kind of sad though, 16.2 and 16.3 really should be sort of freebie levels for me. I've practiced those a lot. They're not complicated, they're run and jump levels. So the fact that I lost time on both of them is definitely disheartening and is not going to help where I'm at now, but we'll keep moving. Last time, I guess every level so far in World 16. 16.4, likely to be an adventure as well. So this is a really cool long level with lots of different parts to optimize. And so it's actually kind of cool to again, learn and practice because there are so many different elements of New Super Mario Bros. Speedrunning that sort of you get to work with. And it's not just, go to the right. It's every sort of jumping, wall jumping, spin jumping, twirling combination kind of imaginable. Sorry, I just always want to make sure I get that triple jump because it lines up this section really cleanly and that's pretty nice. This helmet. But this is another level that's just sort of kind of like 18.8 actually, where it's a lot of specific rooms and your goal is to get through each of the rooms. So it's nice to practice because you can reset each room in the practice mode sort of and keep retrying things that give you trouble. Getting the Yoshi here is sort of Nintendo intended. You can use the POW and drop it carefully onto the spikes and do that as a way to get past that spike section instead. I am not consistent at that, so again, I don't go for it, but getting the Yoshi is definitely slower, but thankfully it is there as a backup, so you can get that and continue on. Like I said, the nice thing with how early the speedrun is, you can definitely sort of pick and choose which strats you want to go for, which strats you consider risky, which ones you consider safe, which ones you consider worth it. For me, trying to do a POW drop in this level is not worth it. But 2.4 is, and I'll do probably some riskier strategies a couple later levels as well. In this Bowser fight, the key thing is to watch the Sledge Bros in the bottom right side of the screen and jump whenever they do. Oops. I thought I had more room. I feel like I'm really close to killing him, so there we go. Once you're close, it's like, oh, I just want to finish him off and run. So yeah, some time lost in that world from just everything, unfortunately. That one you want to watch the Sledge Bros in the bottom right side of the screen, because when they land on the ground, they paralyze Mario, and you do not want to be paralyzed. You cannot shoot fireballs. You're more likely to get hit by fireballs. So timing that jump out really well or timing that jump, at least having it, is important. Oh, great Windows notification. But otherwise, like, that Bowser fight is pretty straightforward. You can, I believe, get underneath him. You get a lot closer to just spam fireballs quickly, but again, haven't really practiced that. Not super worth it to put into a run when I don't feel that confident. Oh, hey, we're at 100 lives. Woo! Yeah, if you're speedrunning this game, lives aren't really a concern. When I was initially getting started speedrunning this, I was like, oh, you know, I wonder if I'll ever need to know the strategies for getting to the top of the flagpole, which loses a little bit of time but gives you an extra life. Maybe I'll need to know that so I can recover lives. And it turns out, no. Lives aren't really a big deal when you're doing a speedrun, because you get so many, and when you're getting to this point in the speedrun, you don't die too often. You don't die often enough to need it. I think I've died 26 times each on my last 2 runs, and clearly I have enough lives to cover for that. And especially since more of the deaths, at least for me, come in later levels, like Worlds 1 through 4 usually would only die 0 to 2 times, maybe, across all the levels. Or, you know, maybe it would just reset. You get enough levels early on that or not enough levels. You get enough lives early on that it's not super an issue. This is one of the levels where I go for a little bit of a riskier strat, and by that I mean a lot riskier. But it is also, you know, significantly faster, so we'll see if I can get it to work. This is another level that's a bunch of small rooms that you sort of need to optimize individually, which makes it a really fun one for me to practice. Frustrating to try to go for really good IL time, because there are so many different small spots where you can lose time, like this. I have now lost time because I had to repeat that mushroom grab, but that's okay. Here's where it starts to get fun. So in this room, I want to get a bomb. And the reason I want to get a bomb is to defeat these guys, but also, I'm gonna have to stop talking. I need to count. Sorry, I'm counting to 6. 1, 2. It's because I need to destroy those particular blocks. So Nintendo blocks you from coming back through this pipe when you have your first key by putting those blocks in the way. There are 2 ways to get rid of those blocks. One is by using a spike helmet, which you can get on the right side of that room, and that is the safer strat. Or you can use a bomb to blow them up, which is riskier because you have to time when you throw that bomb, and if you miss it, you either have to go back and get another bomb, or you die because the bomb came back and exploded in your face. So definitely risky, but thankfully when you go through a pipe transition, or I think a door, the bomb on timer always resets. And in this case, it always resets to, I don't know how many seconds, but it's 6 flashes. I count flashes to 6 and I throw on the dark part of the 6th flash. This one you need to throw that bomb on reasonably precisely to open up that pipe. If you throw them a little too far off, you'll only get one of the blocks to be destroyed. You need both of the blocks to be blown up before you can get to this cloud. So if you throw them, and it needs to land pretty centered on that top block in order for that to work and for both of the blocks to be destroyed. I'm going to need to focus on this part, so I'm going to fall a little bit quiet, but see you soon. Alright, we're good! Sorry, I think a couple of my runs, I have died multiple times to that last section. This is actually one of my cleanest and best runs of this level ever, so I'm actually pretty excited. Or at least in a real run, in a real attempt. So I'm pretty excited about that. That should be a time save, because I don't think I've done that one well in the past. Oh, that last section is just pretty close to a run and jump. There's not too much there, but you know, can get a little crazy. This first part of this level, the biggest thing is go underneath that chain jump. Don't try to do crazy jumps. The second part is an auto scroller plus a platform scroller. Or sorry, no, it's just a platform scroller. This one though has some interesting properties where where you stand on the platform for most of the level makes a difference. You want to stand far back at the start because then you only get one Goomba to land on the platform. You'll see the next one missed off of the side, and we'll see that again up here. If you stand too far forward on the platform, you'll end up with multiple Goombas, and because there's a chain chomp post at the back, they'll keep bouncing toward you, and it makes this level just a lot more hectic and less consistent. But because it is a platform scroller, we're going to do another, not so much fun jump, but really I'm going to take this, unfortunately, not as slow as I should have. You're supposed to take a jump there and go a little crazy. We are going to get a safety. We're just going to wait, actually. These are another set of random chain chomps. Normally you'd want to keep your mushroom and then damage boost through these chain chomps, and that's why you get the mushroom in that level to start with. I unfortunately took damage on the Goomba because I was really hesitant about the right timing to do that final jump. And because of that, I didn't have it to damage boost through the chain chomp, so I wanted to wait and make sure that I wouldn't take damage from them and die right at the end of what is, again, a pretty long level in terms of time because it is that platform scroller. 17.5, you can get up to the Koopa on the before the platform goes backwards, but it's a pretty tight timing and it's definitely risky because the punishment for missing it is death. So I don't go for it in runs yet. I think that's one of the tricks that I'd want to add in maybe next. It doesn't save a ton of time, but like it's not too bad if you can get consistent at the start of that level. Once you're past that very first set of jumps, it's just a run and jump from there. There's no other crazy things you have to do. Just keep going to the right, hit the A button at the correct time, and you're good to go for the rest of that level. 17.6 is another basically run and jump level. The difference with this one is it has a lot of conveyor belts, and so you need to be timing when you jump off the conveyor belt, so you're on the fast ones for as long as possible. And then for the ones going backwards, like that one there, I want to get very frame perfect jumps if I can, so that I am not going backwards for too terribly long. This one, the IL, I think does require you to get at least a frame perfect jump off of the backwards moving platforms right at the end. I don't think you need the one in the middle, but the end ones, because you go slow for so long, especially if you miss that first one, I think a frame perfect jump is required to tie the IL time. And some of the ILs are like harder to tie than others because the ILs depend on when the timer boundary hits. And so depending on when your timer boundary is, if the fastest possible way to do the level is still is just barely into the next timer slot, so it's just barely after the timer hits the next time, then it's pretty easy to tie because you have almost a full second to make that up. So like 1-1 is a good example of that, where it's a pretty easy level to time. You don't have to do any of the, oh my goodness, you don't have to do really any of the hard tricks because you can just sort of tie that level. Okay. Oh boy, that was not how I wanted to do that level at all. Sorry, I had to focus because I lost my my boot, and when you lose the boot, then you take damage, you die. So you want to be pretty careful with those stretches. When you have the boot, you can normally just run on top of them, so that changes at that level significantly if you lose that boot. So that was unfortunate that I took that damage so early on. Thankfully, I did not die. What I was saying with ILs though, what was I saying with ILs? Oh, with the timer, yeah. 1-1 is a great example of if the timer is close, then it's pretty easy to tie the IL. If the timer is really tight, like the IL finishes just barely before the timer changes over, then those are really hard levels to tie. This level, I just need to remember to not make a dumb mistake at the start, and I need to be careful at the end. So at the start, I have so many times grabbed the wrong thing, done the wrong sequence with that opening section, and that loses a lot of time. This is something new that I'm trying, where interesting that he's on this side of the platforms. This is something new where I'm trying, where I essentially get an extra fireball from the beginning, because the cycle that you land on for this section usually isn't favorable, where usually the fire bars will be, or the fire jets will be not in a great spot. Oh, this is dangerous and scary and terrifying. We're gonna wait for Yoshi to come back. So normally I would not need to go back around. The goal is to just sort of keep re-picking up Yoshi and use that to stay safe in this section. But normally it's not that hard to keep safe with Yoshi. Oh shoot, okay. I am like, this section is a struggle right now. Okay, we made it through, we made it through. That is the important part. That is the most trouble I have ever had with that last section in a real run. Oh my goodness. But clearly I really did a bad job with World 17 last time because we still saved a minute and a half off of my previous time, so. Whew, and it's a gold split. Wow, that ending. Just couldn't get past Bowser. Some of the Bowsers in this game push you backwards when you run into them and take damage, and New Super Mario Bros. Is definitely one of those, and so that can make it difficult to get past them compared to just damage boosting through the Bowsers from earlier themes. But hey, now we're into World 18. World 18 is the last world in the game. There are 8 more levels to go, so we're very close to the end, which is exciting. Probably not sub 2, unfortunately. I made way too many mistakes for this to be a sub 2 run. In this level, I get the Fire Flower, even though I don't necessarily intend to keep it, just because this beginning section, usually I'll take 2 hits of damage just going through. Thankfully you get a mushroom back here, and actually it's better not to have a Fire Flower for specifically this section. Oh, come on, let me go through. Because if you don't have a Fire Flower, you can shoot at these things early. If you do, you cannot, because you will actually unlock the thwomps early enough that they can kill you, and that's obviously not ideal. Oh, losing it there though is not intentional, so now we get to do this super fun backup of having to switch Koopa Clown cars in midair to get a Fire Flower back so we can get through this section without having to wait for forever. Clearing out those blocks in the middle is so much faster if you have a Fire Flower, so it is 100% worth it to get one before that section. It's worth it to take the slightly dangerous route of trying to get that one from the moving Koopa Clown car for that reason. Losing it after that point, that specific set of, cinder blocks, is not an issue at all. It's a damage boost, so it's a 1.5 seconds of time loss. I think it's a 1.5 seconds. Maybe it is just half a second. But since you already are past there, there's not a major issue. There's not a major time loss you'll have because you can't make progress. You don't need the power-up anymore. So at that point, it's nice that you have it for safety. 18-2 is a really short level for being this late in the run, but I will need to pay attention to some of the timings on it. I think I jump here and then here. Looking for 3. Okay. Now I just need to not die. Okay. Last section. Yay! Alright. That level is deceptively easy to die in because you want to be constantly holding right and B. And so, if you're barely off on where some of those jumps go, you will run into the wigglers. They're bouncing. They're in weird spots. It's one of those levels that definitely should be that clean. It should look like that every time. But from experience, I can tell you that it does not look like that every time. So glad it worked out this time. This level is one of my favorite levels, so hopefully I can show it off pretty well. It's another level that's primarily small rooms, where if you optimize each room individually, you can do a pretty good job of getting the overall run to work. Ah, dang. Boots are annoying to get through doors because you have to be on the ground to enter the door, and so if your boot hops at the wrong spot, you just don't get through them. But it's a bunch of small rooms, so it's fun to just sort of be able to think about each room independently and try to optimize them separately. But one of the other reasons this level is my favorite is because despite the fact that it's a Magic Koopa level, the Magic Koopas don't actually end up involving any RNG. This right here, this Bowser Jr. fight, is I think the biggest source of RNG in the run. And it's because he went to the left for me, which is slower. If he goes to the right, it's faster, and that's really it. There's nothing crazy to that fight, but it's kind of, again, hilarious. I just find it amusing that in a level about Magic Koopas, the Magic Koopas are not the source of RNG. They're very consistent, thankfully. Here's a Magic Koopa section that looks a bit crazy and can get out of hand really quickly, don't get me wrong. And I messed up the ending, so I still lost a little bit of time, but you just hold to the right. Just hold right and B, and you will have no problems with that section. Oh no. Okay, we're getting a safety mushroom because I missed the jump that I was intending to do. There we go. Normally I land on top of that Koopa there, so never mind, this level now has Magic Koopa RNG now that I've been talking about how it doesn't for a few minutes. Normally you land on top of that Koopa, Magic Koopa after you jump off of that pyramid, and in doing so, You just knock it out right away, go through the door, there's no slowdown. But unfortunately, not quite what happened there. But that level is, again, just kind of a fun one. There's pretty clear ways to practice. There's individual rooms to look at. And just some really kind of cool strats. Like the hold right strat to defeat the first Magic Koopa, I just find so satisfying. Because it's a room that looks chaotic and crazy, and there's so much going on. But just by holding right, you're good to go. This is 18-4 is fun. Oh my goodness, missing all sorts of jumps today. It is one of the few levels in the game where we actually do fight Bowser. That is not a common occurrence in this game, despite the fact that it is a Mario game. The two Bowsers, we have slightly different strategies for. For this first one, it is faster to kill him with fire than to have him fall through the pit, but the fight with him with the fire can get very tricky very quickly, and so I usually, I'll go for it in case he misses the pit, or in case I happen to get lucky and get it, but I don't go for it very seriously. Like, I'm not honestly trying to get the fire kill, it's just sort of there. This Bowser fight is the opposite. This Bowser fight, if you are standing close enough to this Bowser, he will never hit you with his fire. And so you can get really close to him very safely and just completely spam the fireball button and get a quick kill on him pretty fast. Like, that second Bowser fight is much more consistent for me than the first one. So that's 18-4 down. We now only have 4 levels left in this game, so we're getting really close to the end here. And hopefully I can save at least a little bit more time, but we'll see. I died a lot on 18-6, so I'm just fingers crossed for that one. Next up is 18-5 though. Like 18, I think through 2 or 3, it's weirdly short for being this late in the game, and it's very easy. All you have to do is fly this whole level. There's a lot going on the bottom screen, but all you're doing on the top screen is flying along, and it's a cool level. Like, the fact that they set it up so the shell gets all the coins, defeats all the enemies is actually like really fun, creative, inspiring. But in terms of difficulty, that was the level. Ta-da! 19 seconds of just flying. And not difficult flying either. You don't have to worry about cape twirls or flying upward or gaining height. It's just stay in a relatively straight line and you'll make it to the end goal without a problem. Nothing comes up to attack you. It's just really a clean level. Now we're into the last 3 levels, and these are sort of more the final bosses. 18-6 for me can be a really, really big pain. 18-7 can be nerve-wracking if the wigglers get out of hand, and then 18-8 is the final level, but fingers crossed this will go. Like, we'll just keep moving. Alright, I'm gonna be quiet because I definitely want to be paying attention on this one. Oh my goodness. Sorry, my heart rate was like skyrocketing there. So all of those jumps are performed over a death-defying pit. You can see where the platform is. It doesn't even save all that much time. Ah, it's so frustrating. And especially that last pyramid or that last upward triangle of saw blades. If you jump on the right side of them, you will take damage. On like the ascending side. If you jump on the wrong side, it'll bounce you into the other saw blades and you'll take damage, which means you lose Yoshi, which means you're dead. Like, there's nothing you can do at that point. So that level, I think I died in like 3 times on my current PB, which is unfortunate. This level is an auto-scroller and it's underwater, so it's not too bad. You can definitely die, you can definitely lose time, but hopefully none of those things will happen. The nice thing about this level, they did make it like pretty crazy in terms of just how many enemies there are. Underwater wigglers especially are not fun, but they give you lots of shellmets for both safety, for attacking enemies. I usually want to grab one. Oh wait, here's Thwomp Jail. Yay! I like to knock the thwomps above the screen into Thwomp Jail, and then they just get mad and constantly spam against the screen and just throw their little temper tantrum up there where no one can see. But as I said, this level gives you lots of shells, so you can use them for shellmets. You can use them to toss at enemies. I like to hold one because it changes the way that Mario swims. It makes him swim upwards and a bit faster. And that's important in terms of faster for the end of the level. In order to get the optimal time on the end of the level, you definitely want to be holding a shell. But in general, it just is another source of safety, where at least if I lose my helmet, I have something to attack an enemy, or I have a way to put the shell back on. One thing you didn't see in this section is wigglers. They spawn out of those bullet bill launchers there. Those actually spawn wigglers. If you hit those hidden blocks at the right time, then you will never get a wiggler, and you can completely avoid the absolute chaos that is trying to deal with wigglers underwater, at least at that point in the game. The trick is the first one you want to hit as soon as possible. The second one you want to wait to hit until it's already been on your screen for a little while. If you approach that one too early, the wiggler will spawn every time. I don't know why it works that way, but it does. I'm glad I figured out how to get around it, but not too bad. This is what wigglers look like underwater. They're a mess, but by baiting them to go upwards and then jumping around them or ducking around them, we can make this section pretty consistent as well, so there's not too much to worry about. This end of the level is the only part that's not an auto-scroller, really, so it is the only section where holding that shell and making sure that you have that shell in your hand makes a big difference. So if you're trying to optimize an IL this level, you do need the shell as soon as possible at the beginning. You need to not bonk before going in that first pipe, and you need to have it there at the end of the level. Everything else, pretty optional. Woo! We are now on the last level in the entire game. This is another one of those room by room ones that can be really fun. The biggest mistake I usually make, besides the propeller room, which we'll see a bit later, is I go the wrong direction on this first part. So we're gonna try really hard not to do that. So this is like as close as we get to a puzzle level, I think, in this first section. Ooh, that would have been bad, dying to that shell. Where you sort of have to decide, oh, what item do I need to complete each area? So that first area, in order to open up this pipe, you need a Koopa shell to get rid of those blocks. Then I'm going to take the POW up to the top left room and use that to clear out some munchers to get an item over there. And then the key thing is I have to go back to the bottom pipe. I will want to go to the top right pipe, but I need to not do that. So I'm seriously just constantly thinking here, I need to go to the bottom pipe, I need to go to the bottom pipe. I think in both my original playthroughs, like all of my previous personal bests have me going through that top right pipe because I just make that mistake over and over. But you need a spring in order to beat that top right room, as well as the key. Let's make sure I do this correctly. Oh man, getting out of this room is a struggle today. There we go. You need a spring in addition to the key to beat the top right room. So if you go in the top right room without the spring, you have to leave and come back down again. And worse, I have done that badly enough that I have panicked and died to this Koopa because I was so freaked out about having gone the wrong way. So definitely want to make sure that like the key thing for that first part of the level is just going to the rooms in the right order. The second part of the level becomes linear. There's no longer an exploration element. Everything is exactly in the order that's intended. So there's no longer a risk of sort of going the wrong way. But you definitely want to optimize your movement through each of these sections. This first section involves lots of conveyor belts, so just having really good jump timing is important. Being able to cut those corners. This is where you get the fire flower. This last level is just like a cool masterclass sort of how this game works. So here, I'm getting the fire flower. Like, you saw me try things with Koopa shells earlier. I'll get the propeller next. Like I think this is such a solid final level in terms of forcing you to use the different mechanics you've learned and putting them all together in one big, awesome level. The one complaint I have is the Bowser fight at the end is optional. I really kind of wish we could end on a nice climactic Bowser fight, but not how it works. We at least get the Bowser Jr. fight. So now we've got the propeller. This is the propeller room I was talking about. It's thankfully pretty nice in terms of like if you make a mistake, it's forgiving. You can go get another propeller and come back. But it's a time loss that's frustrating because it's right at the end of the game. So thankfully that was a clean propeller room. I do intentionally wait longer than I need to on sort of that final jump just because that's what makes it more consistent for me. Here is, I guess, our actual final boss of the game. This is the last boss fight we actually do. Oh, it's actually fine that I took damage there because you actually somewhat damage boosted at the end of this to get through the last section. But unfortunately, this Bowser fight you do not need to do. Here's Kamek. We see him for all of like a second. The reason it doesn't matter if you take damage is because a lot of times... Shoot. I forgot to hit the button to stop the timer. I was so worried about getting there. Damn, okay, I think that's actually a world record. This is, sorry, I'm so excited about explaining. Okay, I want to finish explaining the last part of that level. Because usually if you only do one fireball, you only open a 1 tile wide gap in order to get to the axe. It's helpful to have taken damage because as small Mario you can get through that gap, as large Mario you cannot. But actually the key thing I want to point out now is that that's a 2:03:10. That is like 5 minutes better than my previous best time, and that is actually the new world record. That beats the world record by 3 minutes. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited. That was, obviously it's a gold split for World 18. You can see just how much time I saved in World 18 over, I'll hit next just so we can go through the credits. You can see just how much time I saved in World 18 over my previous best from not dying repeatedly. Like 18.6 was clean. I didn't die there over and over. Had some struggles with 18.3 but didn't die on like 18.2. Had clean Bowser fights on 18.4. Oh my goodness. That was, obviously that was my best run. I was about to say, that's my best run ever, but like that's pretty a redundant statement, or an unnecessary one at least, given the times you see on screen. But wow, 2:03. And my Sum of Best segments is now 1:58, so my Sum of Best now is under 2 hours, which is awesome because, like I said, under 2 hours is really the next big goal, and this is such a big step toward that. I think my current PB on the leaderboards is actually 2:12. I never submitted the 2:08 because it didn't move me up in the leaderboard, and I feel kind of guilty asking a moderator to moderate and review a 2-hour speedrun if it's not making a difference in the community. Like there were no new strategies I introduced on my most recent PB. There's no, again, leaderboard movement. But 2:03, I'm definitely gonna have to put this one up. Wow, I had actually like set aside a lot more time today to like do multiple runs because I thought it was going to take me multiple tries to get something off the ground or like to really make a dent in this. But like, dang, this was good. I'm like now looking at my splits over here and kind of scanning through. Worlds 1 through 4 were really clean. Worlds 1 through 8 actually were pretty solid. I think I died at least once in those worlds. Let's look through. 1 through 4 I actually remember feeling really good about. World 5 was okay. World 6, I died in 6 too, but thankfully that's a fast death, so it didn't take up too much time. So you can see I lost about 20 seconds between World 5 and World 6. That's the death in 6-2. World 7 was, we'll call it shaky, but I didn't really lose too much time, so you know, it stayed pretty close. World 8 was apparently the best I've done it. I didn't die, I didn't really lose time in that one. World 9 was not good. I lost a minute and a half. Ouch. What was the cause of that? It was a death in 9-3, that super, you know, technical one, and then a death in, the death in 9-5, where I just wasn't really paying attention, had a dumb death in an auto scroller. That was unfortunate and frustrating. 9-6 as well, I messed up and died on. So World 9 was pretty unusually bad. So that one should be something I can clean up. Actually, like 9-7 and 9-8 were good, which is why I didn't lose more time. I usually have struggles with those worlds. It's one of those things when I look at that, it's like, oh, World 9 was just weirdly bad. Of course, then I'll be able to get that minute and a half back and be down at 2:01. No, I usually pick at least one world every run where accidentally I just make a lot of mistakes and don't really get through it cleanly. But this time was World 9. World 10 we died on at least once. I think just once. It wasn't too bad. 10-2 was fine. I think 10-2 in my original was pretty slow, which is why I was able to gain a lot of time back here. Unfortunately, World 11 was super clean, and I still haven't split on World 11. Dang. World 11 was really good, though. I wonder if I can go like manually retime it and add that time into my splits. I bet it would maybe let me do that, so I at least have a time there for future runs. World 11, like I said, was really clean. World 12, let's see. It was slow. Like, I made mistakes on things, don't get me wrong, but I didn't die, and that really is the main thing with World 12, is not dying. World 13, it was pretty clean. I didn't really lose much time in World 13. No major mistakes. Or there was a couple mistakes, nothing major there. So you can see I'm gaining a little bit of time back. World 14 was actually not great. I died a couple times in 14 too. Thankfully I didn't die in 14-3. So like I saved time in World 14, but World 14 just kind of sucks. Like I just made mistakes. I say time because I'm normally bad at it, and I just was less bad today. World 15 lost time because 15-1 I died really late on, and 15-4 was a struggle, so that wasn't great. World 16 I made mistakes on like every single level, but no deaths, so I just lost time from poor play. And then the last two worlds were actually really good compared to, I guess, what I normally do with them. I usually don't have a clean world 17. I usually don't have a clean world 18, but like looking at it, I made mistakes for sure in 17, but I don't think I died. And I made mistakes in 18, but I don't actually think I died there either. So this was definitely, I mean, again, definitely my best run ever, but really excited that I'm getting more consistent, or at least I've been able to prove that I can play those harder worlds much more cleanly than I've done in the past. So yeah, just look at that gold split, 4 minutes, like, oh, so much time save. So yeah, I guess thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know what you think, but yeah, new world record. We'll submit this soon. Hope you're having a great day. See you.